The Second World War was an enormous tragedy. Have you ever wondered how the Dutch remembered this conflict? That's what you're gonna find out in this video. Welcome back, regular viewers. If you're new, I'm Stefan, history teacher, hustling history for you. The only thing you have to do is consider subscribing, hit the notification bell to join the hustle. Let's start. I'm standing here in my hometown Utrecht here in the Netherlands, and the statue you see right here commemorates the Second World War. And me as a Dutchman, I can elaborate on how the Second World War is remembered in the Netherlands. The most important thing you have to realize that the Netherlands was and basically is a small country that in 1940 got invaded by its much larger neighbor, Nazi Germany. Inside the Netherlands there was this common belief that our neutrality would protect us once again. It worked in the First World War and then it would also work in the Second World War, but past results do not guarantee success in the future. On the 10th of May 1940, the German army invaded the Netherlands. Dutch soldiers fought fierce, but the fighting lasted short, because 5 days later, on the 15th of May 1940, the Dutch army unconditionally surrendered. Over 2,000 Dutch soldiers had died in the fighting, and the city center of Rotterdam was bombed flat. The Nazis threatened to bomb also other cities, starting with the city of Utrecht. And luckily, Utrecht was spared, so therefore the historical city center remained intact. So, to everyone visiting the Netherlands, do not only go to Amsterdam, also check out Utrecht. It's definitely worth it. Alright, back to the subject. So basically, we in the Netherlands, we considered ourselves as a victim. Now, you can say there's some kind of victim mentality going on, and I don't mean this in a non-legitimate way, because it was totally legit. The Dutch never asked for war and were then invaded by their much larger neighbor. Now, at first the occupation was fairly mild, because the Dutch were viewed as fellow Aryans and not as inferior races like the Slavs were. Yet, as the war progressed, Jews were being deported. People were being called up for forced labor in Germany, and resistance activities sprung up. The behavior of the occupier became more and more repressive. Speaking of the resistance, well, here we can see some kind of heroism going on. These brave resistant fighters that fought against the evil occupier and that, if caught, were tortured and then executed. Yet, critical assessments of the strategic value of these resistance activities, not to mention the Dutch people that got killed in brutal reprisal actions, that's not often mentioned. And you can clearly see this in Dutch war movies like Soldier of Orange, Black Book and Resistance Banker. I can recommend you to check these movies out. So throughout the years, the attitude towards the Second World War had changed a little bit. The first few years after the Second World War, it was mostly, okay, shut up about your past traumas, head down, back to work, rebuild, and let's look at the future. Now, in the decades after the Second World War, it was a really black and white vision. So you were either a good Dutchman and you were with the resistance, or you were a bad one and you were a collaborator. Statistics show that around 10% of the Dutch collaborated with the Germans, actively collaborated. 5% was in the resistance, and the remaining majority were just making the best of it and trying to adapt to life under German rule. Speaking of collaborators, right after the war was over, Dutch girls that had slept with German soldiers were dragged out of their houses, shaved bald and publicly humiliated and called crowd whores. And then you can ask yourself, well, are these Dutch girls collaborators? Recent views are more nuanced on this. In recent years, there was also more attention to those who suffered at the hands of the Japanese in the Dutch East Indies. Back then, a Dutch colony, what is now Indonesia, and in the beginning of 1942, it got overrun by the Japanese Imperial Army. Its Dutch inhabitants were interned in Japanese prison camps where they suffered harsh treatment. Many POWs of the Royal Netherlands East Indies Army had to work, for example, on construction projects of railways in Burma and on Sumatra. Many of them would die because of the abysmal conditions they suffered there. After the Second World War, when Indonesia became an independent nation, survivors of these Japanese internment camps returned home. And often, when they told their stories, people just shrugged their shoulders and said, well, at least you guys didn't freeze out there. So when I visited Eastern European countries like Russia and Ukraine, you see a different picture when it comes down to the Second World War. Look at these images I shot at these statues. These statues contain so much heroism, like how the Eastern Europeans got invaded by the Nazis and how despite all the hardships and sacrifices they had to make, they persevered and eventually defeated the enemy. And it's kind of a different picture that's been painted there. And it's understandable because the war was much bigger and much more devastating there than it was here. Here you see images of the war memorials in the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv and the Polish capital of Warsaw. And compare that to the statue you see right here, it's kind of different. And the statue you see right here basically resembles the average Dutch person. The average Dutch person was not a collaborator, was not in the resistance. No, the average Dutch person was just trying to make it through the day. On the 4th of May, we commemorate our dead that fell during the Second World War and after it. On the 5th, we celebrate our freedom on Liberation Day. So, how is the Second World War commemorated in your country? Feel free to leave a comment down below. If you want to know more about the Dutch that suffered at the hands of the Japanese, you click right here to check out the video that I made about the Japanese internment camps. Do not forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.